Hi everybody, I hope you're well today. I'm going live to just spend a couple of minutes actually talking about why somatic therapy and somatic coaching is more kind of effective and more transformational, and it's like a completely different beast than just regular talk therapy and kind of talk coaching, because that's what I do, and that's my jam. And so, and I also want to say that these live videos are also really nerve-wracking for me because this perfect component or good enough component is always there in my system, and it's something I have to break through to actually be on this video and do this live thing. And even if I mess up, I'm still live. So thanks you for bearing with me. I just had to say that. So somatic kind of therapy and somatic coaching, it's more, it's integrated, but it's really like system-based healing. It's not just problem solving the way that you would go to a therapist, because you have like a problem and the therapist helps you deal with that problem, in a deeper or more shallow way, depending on the quality of the therapist and their training. But the somatic therapy, like, sure, people come to me all the time with problems, and specific problems, and usually people come to me when, they're going through some sort of a life crisis or a life situation that is really unpleasant and they need support and help. And that's the best place to start. But it's so much more than that. It's transformative. It's a body, mind, and spirit integrated approach. And because we're integrating the body and the spirit and the mind, the results are just like much faster, because we're able to like plug into those problems, raise consciousness around them, and not just be in like a story place here all the time. So this conscious approach, my approach is really like a consciousness-based approach. And it's about breaking through old patterns, old stories, the things that happen in our lives, like again and again and again, that keep us feeling small, keep us feeling not good enough, keep us feeling very familiar and very young. And sometimes we don't even know that it's a familiar place or it's a young place because we're not conscious, because we need to energize these places. And so the journey that I take my clients on is through working on the specific problems, the specific issues, get deep into those underlying patterns, that really early wiring that we all have about how to relate, how to get what we want, get our needs met, what we think we need to do to feel loved or to get love. And so come from that place into a place of functioning from a higher self, functioning from a place of enough love and an expansiveness and abundance and all the manifestations of love and freedom. Of course, that is a destination. And even if we get to that place, we always come back and forth. It's always a dance between our kind of wounds and old wiring and our new wiring and our abundant, expansive wiring. But the transformation, it's like night and day. It's like it allows for so much more enjoyment and stress-free and abundant life that just feels more aligned and more authentic. And so the journey is to pierce through the mask, to pierce through the old conditioning about like the mask that we put on to the world, to be perceived in a certain way, to sort of build relationships from that more like superficial place, which is really old wiring, into the lower self place where we have all of these emotions that we don't want to feel, like anger, like fear, that we repress, we block, we armor against, and into the field of the higher self. The higher self is like what we're born into this world, and it's like this kind of transpersonal place, if you may, of expansiveness and love and freedom and coming to the world from a perspective of abundance, and and we feel this in our body. Our emotions live in our body, and so we can have a talk therapy session, and we're here, we're like in story, we're always telling the story, we're processing it in a very mental way, and that's why we can't really grab into it, we can't understand it so deeply, because we're still in our story and we're still kind of looping in this mental place. And really it's our bodies that hold the energy, that hold these emotions, because emotions are energy. And sometimes, when we're in conflict or things happen, these familiar places, we can feel it, We can feel like a tightening of the chest or like a lump in the throat, that are very associated with emotions. And if you do medicine work, you get to be very, very clear about how emotions live in our body, and how certain emotions bring up certain things in our somatic experience, in our mind-body kind of field. It becomes very crystal clear about how integrated our body and our emotions and our mind structures are. And so how does this somatic therapy thing work? Like what happens, Well, a lot of things happen. It really depends on the client. And we can talk as much as needed, because when we're in certain places, we need to have story. We need to kind of mentally process things to be able to drop into our bodies. So it also includes, talking, and, we have sessions with a lot of talking, sessions with little talking. It really depends. But there is a good deal of talking, because we're so processing in this mental place that we really, really need this component. But then based on the issues, we work to energize those emotions and to energize our consciousness around these stories. Because actually stories don't have much consciousness. Stories are about what happened in the past or what's going to happen in the future based on what happened in the past. So stories are basically loops. They're feedback loops about past experiences. But we really want to energize the current moment. These emotions that are currently right in us, to understand where they come from, why are they there, how did they come there in the first place. And when we really understand that, we can make a choice. Do we want to follow the same old, or do we want to take a different choice in life? A very hard but different choice. And that choice becomes easier and easier and easier the more we do this work. So, with people, we can have all sorts of exercises. Some ways to move this energy involve, sometimes hitting something to express anger, to energize this place of anger, and then see what happens after anger. Is there sadness? Is there fear? Do really young memories come up when you really energize this anger and bring it into the consciousness and allow your mind, body, spirit phenomena, because, we're a phenomena, hold this energy and tolerate it, because it's so hard. We might do some chest opening exercises that can expose the vulnerability that it takes to surrender, to receive, to be vulnerable, and all the fear that is guarding that, all the armoring that we have where we don't want to open to these places. There's working with joy and understanding our accomplishments and how challenging they sometimes are, and how much we just need to be praised for our accomplishments and validated in our accomplishments, because a lot of times we were not validated for the things that give us joy when we were young, and so it's really hard to feel joy when we're older if we were never validated in our joy, in our love when we were younger. So this is kind of like examples of the stuff that I work with. Another main component of this is how do we relate to people from a higher self place? Because even though this is how we come into the world, most of us, and I would probably say to some extent all of us, definitely this person here, we lose this place of how to communicate, how to relate from a place of higher self so quickly in our young childhood, because the wiring, this wiring about how to get love, how to feel validated, what we need to do, how we need to be, how we need to act. All these stories that come up in our adulthood that that cycle the same patterns that are so unsatisfying. All of these stories block this higher place of communication. And so when we tap into it, we learn all these skills that sometimes sound like, a foreign language at first, but then we get them, about how to communicate in a way that shows our vulnerability and yet has clear but flexible boundaries. How we express our needs from this place of I and not from blaming, shaming, or guilting the other person or ourselves, no matter how bad the situation is, because sometimes we think it's their fault and they have to change so I feel better. So how do we take responsibility for our emotions? Such a hard thing to do. Such a hard thing to do. So much tripping up on that one. How do we take responsibility for our emotions? Because all of our lives we think it's the other person who is responsible for our emotions. And certainly their actions or their words may trigger something in us. But how do we respond to it in a way that doesn't put the other person on defense, and then we're just two wounded inner children just triggering until the whole thing falls apart, or we're resentful, we have to pull away, or we get really anxious and we have to grasp. How do we communicate and respond and relate in a way that takes responsibility for ourselves? Again, super, super courageous work. Work I do every day. I try. It's such a process. Very happy that my partner is just so tolerant of my process with it too. And that's the beauty of conscious relationship, right? To tolerate all of this. And so, that's just about it. I don't want this to be too long. If you're interested in getting a clarity call, what I do with the clarity calls is we kind of talk about the issues, the challenges that you're facing. We kind of get really succinctly, very efficiently into some of the roots of this problem, some of the story, the pattern. And then I just share about how I would work with you in a tailored, personalized approach to break through these patterns, and how that would look. So if you're curious and you're interested, clarity calls are free. I have 2 spaces opening up in September for the work, so I'm really excited about that, to bring in new people. All right, all my love. Bye. And tell me what you think.